go out to dinner. And I spent 4 hours with him. You know, that's the put options, the NORAD, the buildings. You know, I gave him the DVDs, but, you know, I'm just saying, I just can't believe our government would do something like that. And again, that's where I think the history comes in. Governments, you know, it's a Machiavellian philosophy. You know, the nation first. You know, I don't know how many times I've told this, but real quick, Lee Hamilton's one of the commissioners, right? And this is another thing. I mean, talk about gatekeepers. He's the 9/11 Commission, and he was after the Blue Book. Another book came out before the 9/11 Commission, the Joint Congressional Hearings, and it was a big blue book, and they had 28 redacted pages in there. Now, I'm with the Jersey girls. Well, it was the Jersey girls, and I just went down to his office because they were talking to him. So, of course, the question is, now this is, you know, back in 2002, 3 when the book came out. You know, why are all these pages redacted? It's Saudi Arabia. All the bin Ladens left the country the day after, or 3 days after 9/11. What's going on here? And you hear so much about Saudi Arabia and this and that, and bin Laden's, you know, it was mind-boggling. So Hamilton says, well, if it was up to, I agree with you. We should, you know, I'd like to see this, you know, information, but if it was up to me to put that information out there, I couldn't do it for the sake of our country. It's too much information. Now, so a couple of years later, I've done a lot of research on Iran-Contra because of the idea of, it shows you how the shadow government works.
In the end,
Oliver North.
The ends justify the means.
Right, but 92, they had the Iran-Contra hearings. Curry, Senator Curry was part of that. He went so far, but then cut it off. You know, again, CIA dealing. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. How many people are involved in this? Finally, it comes up to Hamilton to review all this, and these are his exact words: "For the good of the country, we can't allow any more information on this." Now, 1980, October surprise. Boat from Marcus Hook who sails out, suddenly disappears in the Mediterranean. Now, I can't prove that George Bush Sr. was involved in this, but he happened to be in Chester the day before the boat. You know, why is George Bush Sr. right at the election, right before the election? And then there's information that George Bush Sr. was in Czechoslovakia making a deal with the Iranians, sending $40 million worth of arms. And this is immediately after he's in Chester. The boat leaves from Marcus Hook, and guess who the mayor of Marcus Hook was at that time? Kurt Weldon. Now, again, I'm not incriminating anyone, but there was plenty of information out there that George Bush went to Czechoslovakia, and he wanted the Iranians to hold the hostages until January, because Carter was going to come up with the, you know, that he was going to get them out right before the election. Of course, he would have won that election easily. So all this has happened in October. The ship disappears, and there's plenty of information out there. Guess who put a stop to the investigation? Our friend Lee Hamilton. You know, so it just shows you how it works. You know, here's an established member of the Congress. I mean, he's a Democrat. You know, he's the one that's talking about bipartisanship. But 3 times for the good of the country. Well, that's where the Machiavellian, they don't care what happens to the civilian. They don't care what is good for the country. That's the only important thing. And that's, to me, the most important thing people have to realize. Innocent victims don't matter.
The good of the ruling class.
Right, well, which, yeah, there's no question about it. But that's a perfect example. This one man stopped 3 pertinent investigations. And we're not going to hold these people accountable. And that's, until we hold them accountable, then politicians are going to say, geez, maybe I better not do this in secret, because I'm going to be hung. I don't believe in capital punishment, but, you know, maybe that's the answer.
I think what's interesting what you did is you went back in history to inform yourself and look at some of the signs, because I think that's what's important now is to start looking to the future with that same knowledge and saying, okay, can I now start to see the signs, and can I head it off? You know, that's part of this sort of mass insomnia, or this mass transferring, is we might look at one individual issue and then go and get that all settled and package it up in a neat package educate ourselves enough to see the signs, so that if they're coming again, we can head it off. We're a very educated populace, rather than
Peter Dale Scott wrote a book in 1972, and it was just re-released 2008, and I just got it from Amazon yesterday, with how it applies to 9/11. The whole, it's like it just happened during Vietnam, basically, and it happened in the 40s, and it happened in the 20s, and you know, when the banking system's involved, that happens every 80 years. It's documented. It's just we have short memories.
Yeah, Peter Dale Scott's great, because he sort of tries to connect the history of everything.
The deep politics.
Yeah, the deep politics.
That's where knowledge is power.
Oh, it is.
Exactly.
I mean, I spent 6 months just reading about, pre-World War I. You know, what are we all taught in school? Woodrow Wilson made the world safe for democracy. You know, that's it. That's all I learned. You know, you didn't learn about the Balfour Declaration and what's happening there. I mean, it's just, and that's pertinent to. I mean, history is so important. And of course, we're not learning history in the schools, as far as I know. I know when I taught history, I didn't teach it the way it should be taught. You know.
You know what I just discovered with this whole 9/11 thing, falling down this rabbit hole, for me it was about 3 years ago, was the coup in 1933. Never knew about it, and it involved Prescott Bush's people, and Smedley Butler, the greatest Marine that ever lived, ratted on those guys and put a stop to it. But FDR, there was almost a coup in 1933, and no one knows it. You know, we're not taught that in history. It's unbelievable.
But to me, the key to everything is exposing 9/11.
Right.
Personally.
Right, I
I
agree.
mean, it's important to know everything, but, it's right here.
It's the path
It's
to all
right
else.
here. I know they, as far as I'm concerned, they killed 3,000 people to move on their agenda. And there's just,
Yeah, I used to think, back in the beginning, that people would just never, be open to that. But as time has gone on, my opinion is that it is possible now that there will be a shift in public opinion.
I'm glad you're an optimist.
I am. I'm such an optimist about this. I really am, Bob. I just see it's not the facts so much. It's this awakening. This awakening, people just getting in tune with the fact that there is the manipulation going on. They're seeing it occurring in different
It's seeping
venues,
in.
and so it's allowing them to be open to.
You're around certain people believe that, but I mean, again, I live in Orland. There's no one in Orland. No one that believes that. No one. They
I bet you there are.
I would bet.
They're
I know one
people
person.
By their own four walls,
and
they're keeping to themselves.
And I know it's not the only suburb, it's and I know people, but it's still a small, hey, I love you, but
Yeah.
I'm just pessimistic. Yeah.
Just to back that up a little bit, I agree that I've been researching this on the internet like crazy, and it seems like once you sort of see a little bit of 9/11, you can't unring that bell of like something is going on here, and I cannot see things the way I used to see them. And one thing that gives me hope, and when I read about the New World Order stuff, I get really depressed. Like, how do you beat a military-industrial complex, from grassroots levels, So it bums me out. But then I start to look around, and it's like there's pilots for 9/11 Truth. There are people that have been military pilots. There's veterans for 9/11 Truth. There's architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth. So it started, and these kids in New York, We Are Changing, just go around and just hassle Cheney and hassle Karl Rove.